Either I know why and when I need more factory space, or you need another boy. And that's all right with me, too. Because I can take these plants and pick my own spot in the motor production field. You won't have to worry so much about dividends. There won't be many.
Hello to all the classic people that are returning. I'm glad you're back. I want to welcome any new visitors. As a technical note, references and citations are listed for each show on the site at classicmovierev.com. Today on Classic Movie Rev, we are taking on the Film Noir Impact 1949. I want to give a shout out to Thunderstruck 1954 for their comments on my YouTube videos. Thanks a lot. I really appreciate it. Before we get going, I want to remind you to follow the links in the show notes or from the site to visit our store where you can find tees, totes, stickers, badges, face masks, wall art, or whatever you want. Today's movie is one of those film noirs that had a happy ending tacked on. So it's a good watch and has some excellent actors. On IMDb.com, the film is rated 7.0, and that seems about right. On RottenTomatoes.com, the film has a 60% on the tomato meter and only 55% audience approval. New York Times film critic Bosley Carruthers hated this movie. On March 21, 1949, he said, quote, "The opening shot in Impact is a picture of a dictionary, or a reasonable facsimile of one, and while the audience is gazing upon the symbol of authority, a voice, as of some invisible scholar, reads a definition of the title word. Impact, it says with firm conviction, the force with which two lives come together, sometimes for good, sometimes for evil. Thereafter a story unfolds. If anyone seeing this picture is willing to string along with that as a fair definition of impact, we can't vouch for the film's appeal to him, for it seems fairly obvious that the authors have geared their intellects to the suppositional level of that phony lexicon. And everything which happens in this picture is as cheaply opportunistic and contrived as that arbitrary definition. You can either swallow it whole, or you don't. Frankly, your correspondent doesn't. His past giving credence to yarns about fellows who go through mental torments because their mean wives have tried to bump them off. And furthermore, this fable about one such agonized gent is as lifeless and wretched in its playing as it certainly must have been in the script. As the fellow whose wife has betrayed him, and who thereafter moons for quite a spell, Brian Donlevy has all the animation and charm of an automaton. Helen Walker is just about as handsome and just about as blank as an electric refrigerator in the role of the coldly villainous wife." Unquote. From the DVDbeaver.com, critic Gary W. Tozzi liked Impact 1949, saying, quote, "As far as modest film noirs go, this one is one of the best. A simple plot idea is twisted to the max for late 1940s audiences." Unquote. Stephen Bagg of Diabolic Magazine stated it was, quote, "a solid film noir with a decent cast and typically brisk handling. Lubin may not have been strong with horror, which depends heavily on mood, but with thrillers, which benefit from speed, he was fine." Unquote. There are many returning actors today, and quite a few of them are from the film noir pantheon, so let's get going. Actors.
Right, and I'm a Shakespearean actor.
Brian Donlevy played a successful businessman whose wife attempts to have him murdered. The great mustached Donlevy was first covered in Film Noir, The Big Combo, 1955. Ella Raines was Marcia Peters, a widowed gas station owner who is pure sunshine and light. Raines was first covered in the film noir Brute Force, 1947. Helen Walker plays the role of adulteress and murderess Irene Williams. She was a good domestic femme fatale. Helen Walker was first covered in film noir The Big Combo, 1955. However, she was a great femme fatale in Nightmare Alley, 1947. One of my favorites, Anna May Wong, had a small role as Su Lin Chung, the Williams' maid. Wong was first covered in Daughter of the Dragon, 1931. Tony Barrett played Jim Torrance, aka Burns. He was the boyfriend of Irene Williams. Barrett was covered in the film noir Mystery in Mexico, 1948. Charles Coburn played Lieutenant Tom Quincy. Coburn was born in Georgia in 1877. I would have bet real money that this guy was English. Coburn is known for wearing a monocle and often has a giant stogie in his mouth. At the age of 17, Coburn began working in a local theater as an usher. He started acting, and by 1901 he had appeared on Broadway. Coburn married actress Iva Myrtle May Wills in 1906. In 1918, Coburn and Iva formed the Coburn Players, and this resulted in more theater work. In 1928, Coburn opened his own theater in New York. However, as a result of the Great Depression, the place closed in December 1932. Iva died in 1937. Following her death, Coburn began working in Hollywood. He was 60 years old at the time. Coburn's first full-length movie was People's Enemy, 1935. Some of the other movies that he made during his career that lasted until 1961 include Of Human Hearts, 1938, Yellow Jacket, 1938, and The Devil and Mrs. Jones, 1941, where he was nominated for a Best Actor in a Supporting Role Oscar. This last film should not be confused with The Devil in Mrs. Jones, 1973. Later films include King's Row, 1942, Heaven Can Wait, 1943, where he won the Best Actor in a Supporting Role Oscar, The More the Merrier, 1943, Wilson, 1944, The Green Years, 1946, where Coburn was again nominated for the Best Actor in a Supporting Role Oscar, Film Noir Impact, 1949, Monkey Business, 1952, As Hippocrates in the Story of Mankind along with everyone else, Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, 1953, Around the World in 80 Days, 1956, and John Paul Jones, 1959, where he played Benjamin Franklin. Coburn died in 1961. Story.
Let me explain. No, there is too much. Let me sum up.
A dictionary opens and the definition of impact is given as when, quote, two people come together, sometimes for good and sometimes for evil, unquote. Not even close, as Mr. Carruthers stated above. The corporation board of a large company is staffed with old white men. They're agonizing over some type of decision. Walter Williams, Brian Donlevy, is giving commands and getting everything ready outside. He walks into the boardroom and says if he doesn't get his way, he will walk and the company will start losing money.
Well, Mr. Darcy, what's the score? 9-0?
I'm afraid it is, Walt. If you think you can persuade them to change their minds, go right ahead.
Gentlemen, I never interfere in stock issues, dividends, or anything else in your department. I must run my department with no interference. Either I know why and when I need more factory space, or you need another boy. And that's all right with me, too. Because I can take these plants and pick my own spot in the motor production field. You won't have to worry so much about dividends. There won't be many.
He gets a reluctant unanimous vote. After the vote, one of the board members asks Walter how he can guarantee the price, to which he replies that he already bought the 3 factories that morning. Back in his office, Walter has a present for his wife, Irene, Helen Walker. Her picture is prominently displayed and he is clearly devoted to her. Walter has placed a call to his wife, but his secretary was informed that Irene was at the dentist. Walter is getting ready to go on a vacation to Tahoe with Irene. Irene calls back and tells Walter she can't go because of a toothache. Their maid is Su Lin Chung, Anna May Wong. Walter says he will drop by the house before he leaves town. Walter arrives at the house to find Irene with an ice pack on her jaw. He is happy to see her and gives her the monogram brooch he has gotten for her. Walter mentions that she is the one that got him wearing monogrammed items. Su Lin is outside the door when Walter is explaining how he handled the board. What she hears is, either I get what I want or you get another boy. He then accidentally knocks a flower pot over. Irene changes her mind and says she is going with him and will meet him at a drugstore that is on the way so he won't have to drive back home. When Walter is gone, Irene no longer uses the ice pack. She calls a number out in Berkeley, which is long distance. A man, Jim Torrance, Tony Barrett, answers the phone and calls her beautiful. Su Lin is outside the door. Near the docks, Jim gets out of a taxi. He instructs the hack to take a suitcase and jacket to the bellboy at the airport hotel in Oakland and hold it until Jack Burns returns for it. Walter arrives at the location and goes looking for his wife. He calls his home and Irene says that she will not be going on the trip. She asks Walter to take her, quote, cousin, Jim Torrance, as far as Denver. Walter reluctantly agrees. Walter makes arrangements to send his wife flowers every morning while he's gone. Jim is waiting by Walter's car when he gets there. Jim asks where Irene is, and Jim doesn't have any luggage with him. Later, Jim says he was with Patton's Third Army in Italy. Walter calls him out on the lie as the Third Army was only in Sicily.
What outfit were you with?
Patton's Third Army.
How was it?
Rough. Except for the time in Italy. I kind of liked it there.
Patton's outfit never got to Italy.
After dark, Walter spots a roadside diner. Jim waits in the car. Walter calls home, but the house is dark and empty. He calls Sue Lynn and leaves a message saying not to worry about the problem and he will take care of it. I believe the message was for Sue Lynn to take to his wife. Jim is outside letting air out of the right rear tire. When Walter comes outside, Jim takes over as the driver. The pair head into the mountains where the road is winding and the sides are very steep. Walter catches Jim in another lie about a scar on Irene's cheek. Walter falls asleep, and Jim pulls over saying that he thinks they have a flat. They are parked on the edge of a steep cliff. When Jim takes off his jacket, he is wearing monogrammed shirts. Jim gets the tools and replaces the wheel. He tells Walter he dropped something. When Walter bends over, Jim says, "From Irene and me, sucker," and clubs Walter with the tire iron.
Irene and me, sucker.
A train light shines on Jim, and a car stops and asks if he needs help. He manages to get rid of the body without anyone seeing Walter. Jim rolls Walter down the hill. Jim jumps in the car but realizes the keys are in Walter's pocket. He goes down the hill and gets the keys. While he is down, a Beacon's moving truck stops to ask if he needs help. Jim speeds away into the waiting arms of a high-octane gas truck. The moving truck drivers rush to help, but everything is a fireball. Irene checks into Jack Burns' room at the airport hotel in Oakland. Much later, the banged-up Walter wakes at the bottom of the hill. He remembers hearing the words about who attacked him. He puts the entire story together in his mind. The Beacon's truck is still parked at the top of the hill, and Walter gets in the open back. Since the person driving the burned car cannot be identified, they assume it's Walter. Lieutenant Tom Quincy, Charles Coburn, goes to see Irene. She is just coming in as the phone rings. Irene asks for Quincy to be sent up. She gets rid of her overcoat and puts on a robe. Quincy starts asking questions about her husband, and he finally tells her that her husband is dead. She puts on a show and says she warned him not to pick up hitchhikers. Quincy says there was no hitchhiker involved. He comments on how she took the news. The Beacon's truck crosses into Nevada before the drivers stop to eat. The truck drivers read that Walter took 10 years to rise from sheet metal worker to top manager. Walter also finds out that he is considered dead. He is playing everything over and over in his head, trying to make some sense of it all. Irene is still trying to find out what happened to Burns, really Jim. I just got that joke, Burns. Sue Lynn lets Irene know that Quincy is waiting to see her. Roses from Walter are still coming to Irene. Quincy questions Irene about skid marks found at the crash site. He notices her monogrammed handkerchiefs. Walter wanders around aimlessly until he arrives in a small town. He can't get a bus or a train out until the next day. Walter then calls Aunt Irene and finds out there is no relative named Jim Torrance. He knows he has been duped. Walter cries a bit, and then the train station manager sends him across the street to Doc Bender. Walter is cleaned up and goes back on the street. He sees newspapers announcing his death. Walter throws his wedding ring in the stream, just like he was in Reno. The two Beacons drivers find Walter's briefcase in the back of their truck. They call the police. The cops identify Walter's prints and send a telegram to the FBI requesting matches to other prints. Quincy gets notified that the other prints on the case belong to Jim Torrance. Quincy follows Jim's trail to Berkeley. Jim is gone, but Quincy sees that all of his laundry is monogrammed. Also in the laundry is a monogrammed hanky with IW on it. Quincy now has a good idea who was involved in the crime. He also finds that a lady ordered Jim's monogram and one's for her husband with the initials WW. They also have the phone records of Irene calling. Irene is getting ready to leave on an extended trip when Quincy drops in on her. Quincy talks about the briefcase and the presence of another person. Quincy lies and says they don't know the name of the other men. The police trail Irene where she goes to Western Union. She begins writing to Burns, Tim, but gets suspicious and sends a fake telegram. The police arrest Irene. Walter is in Larkspur, Idaho. He wanders into a gas station and hears someone using a hammer on a car engine. He then starts mansplaining to the mechanic.
Have a heart, son. You trying to wreck that engine? Oh.
Sure. It's a hobby of mine.
When the mechanic looks up, it is a female named Marcia Peters, Ella Raines. Walter takes over the repair job and has the engine humming in no time. Marcia doesn't have a mechanic, so she is friendly to Walter. When a man comes in wanting to have his car fixed at a different station, Walter steps in to help. Marcia's husband was killed in World War II. She offers Walter a job, and he accepts temporarily. Marcia and her mother invite Walter to supper. Walter is taken in by the joy of small-town life. Marcia's mother, Mrs. King, Mae Marsh, lets Walter board at their house. Walter sees in the paper that the police are looking for Irene's lover. Time passes and Walter likes the work. Marcia wears a Princess Leia hairdo. Walter helps a couple with a new baby get a ring job done on their car. 3 months pass and Walter invites Marcia out for a movie. Back in San Francisco, they arrest Irene and are still looking for Jim Torrance. Irene's attorney demands 1/3 of her inheritance for his defense. They agree that if Jim shows up, they will put all the blame on him. Walter plans to head on with his travels. Marcia wants him to stay and says the community really likes him. Walter has kept all of the newspaper clippings about his death in the trial. Marcia finally puts it together that Walter is married and has been badly hurt by his wife.
Grow a lot of nice things here.
Anyone in particular?
You'll have to skip the answer to that one. Someone tore it out of the book.
You're married, aren't you, Bill?
Yep. That's right.
You must have loved her very much to have been hurt so deeply.
The fire horn sounds and Walter runs to the station because he is a member of the volunteer firefighters. Later, Mrs. King is darning Walter's socks. She has found the newspaper clippings. She says he has something to take care of, but she hasn't told Marcia.
You have a heap of things that need mending, haven't you, son?
Does Marcia know?
Do you think I'd tell her? This is your problem, Bill. Because I found out about it doesn't give me the right to tell anyone else, not even Marcia. When you trust folks, you trust them, and you give them a chance to work out things the way that seems right to them.
How can one little woman be so big?
Don't forget, it's a lot easier to be tolerant and understanding at 50 than it is at 25.
Walter is packing to leave when Marcia comes home. He tells Marcia the entire story. She is happy that Walter is going back. Walter says he is not going back and will let Irene stand trial. Marcia is heartbroken that Walter won't do the right thing. While waiting for the train, Walter replays everything, including Marcia. Finally, Walter returns to San Francisco via plane. Marcia goes along with him. The pair go directly to the police to reveal the events. Walter's statement will result in Irene being released. They bring Irene into the room, but she doesn't see Walter in the back. When she sees Walter, it's like she's been hit. Her shock that Jim is dead cannot be hidden. Irene accuses Walter of murder.
You did it. You killed him.
No. He tried to kill me. Thought he had. And he ran into the truck. It was an accident.
An accident? You wait all these months to tell this story. You let me rot in this filthy jail.
Wait a minute.
You let everybody believe you're dead. Pretty convenient, wasn't it? A dead man can't be tried for murder.
She says that they had a violent fight when the vase was broken about Jim before Walter left. Irene invokes Sue Lynn as a witness. The police arrest Walter for suspicion of murdering Jim. Quincy investigates Walter and Marcia. The police don't believe Walter's story. Walter is told that he has been indicted and Irene has been released. Marcia visits Walter and gives him some hope. Quincy comes in with Walter's clippings. Walter had said he had had amnesia, and Jim was a random hitchhiker. Finally, Walter breaks and tells Quincy the real story of how Irene engineered Jim riding with him. Quincy and Marcia go to the scene of the crash and look for clues. Marcia gets Quincy to check immigration for Sue Lynn's location. Of course, it is Chinatown. She is hiding in the apartment, but her uncle lies to help her hide.
You are Singh? Understand? You study English?
Also French, Italian, and Hebrew.
Sue Lynn thinks she is protecting Walter. Walter's murder trial begins. The evidence piles up against Walter, and they use him saying that he had amnesia to expose him as a liar. Sue Lynn hears the radio reports of the trial. Walter takes the stand. Sue Lynn shows up in court, and Marcia chases her down in some fancy high-heeled running. There is a taxi chase into Chinatown, and some more high-heeled running in some alleys. They finally arrive back at the uncle's apartment. Sue Lynn thinks her testimony about the vase would be harmful to Walter.
I cannot help. You must forget that you found Sue Lynn.
Forget it? But you're his only witness. You're the only one that can help.
Not as a witness. Only with silence can I repay his great kindness to me and my family in China.
Why?
For I heard other things that most unhappy day. From Mrs. Williams' bedroom, his voice very loud and angry. A flower vase broken to pieces.
He can explain all that.
They do not believe what he's already told. That I heard anything would do harm. Don't you see?
She says that Irene went to a secret meeting the night Jim was killed. She also says the key to a hotel room is still in Irene's coat pocket. Sue Lynn, Marcia, and Quincy go to Irene's house and find the key to the airport hotel in Oakland. Marcia and Quincy confirm that Burns is actually Jim. The hotel evidence, the scrap telegram, and the flight reservations are strong evidence. But for whom? Quincy says the evidence is not strong enough. In the morning, the defense calls Irene to the stand. They use the telegram, 2 signed photographs, letters to Jim from Irene, and monogrammed items as evidence. They say she met with Mr. Burns on the night of the murder. They also have the hotel key. Quincy has found Jim's suitcase, and it is filled with Irene and Jim's items. The DA, William Wright, asks the judge, Jason Robard Sr., to dismiss charges against Walter and arrest Irene on conspiracy to commit murder. Walter is offered his old job, and Marcia agrees to go to Denver with him. The incorrect definition of impact is shown again. I'll be back with the conclusions and world-famous short summary following a word from our sponsors. Summary. There's not a lot to say about this movie. One item of note is that this was Anna May Wong's first role since Lady from Chungking 1942. There is little doubt that this resulted from racial attitudes created during World War II, although the Chinese were our allies during the war. The only other thing I have to say about this film is it would have been impossible for Brian Donlevy to have mistaken Ella Raines' character for a boy when she was leaned over working on the car. World famous short summary. Man goes on a trip and finds more than he expected. I hope you enjoyed today's show. You can find connections to social media and email on the site at classicmovierev.com or in the podcast show notes. Don't forget to follow the links in the show notes or from the site to visit our store. We have a lot of noir designs. If you enjoyed this show, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. If you've already subscribed, you can tell a friend, colleague, or family member about the show, or leave a review where you listen to podcasts. It really helps the show get found. If you want to comment, suggest a movie, or help out, contact me by email at jec@classicmovierev.com. Beware the Moors.